What is going on, YouTube? So coming back today with a video that's a little bit opposite of a video I made a couple days ago, which was the Big 12 expansion, realignment, whatever you want to call it, and then what I thought, the 10 best candidates would be for expansion, and then who I think they should have added if they would add 2 and or 4 teams. So like I said, today's going to be a little bit opposite. I'm going to be doing what happens if the Big 12 just disbands, if the entire thing just imploded. Where would every team go? So right now the Big 12 has the least amount of teams of any of the power conferences. They're sitting at 10 teams right now, where I believe every team every conference that's a power conference except for the Pac-12 right now is sitting at 14. So where would every team go? Before I get into it, I will make an entire blog post about this because it's actually a very interesting subject to me. I'll put the link to that in the description below. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started with Texas Tech. So, Texas Tech, you would think that it would be a very hard, thing to find a good conference for Texas Tech to fit in well with. And I had Texas Tech and TCU going to the same conference. Considering both of them, I believe, are the teams that are furthest west, I want to say. I might not be right about that. It's close. But either way, I believe that they would fit in best with the Pac-12. Pac-12, arguably the second best offensive conference in the country. I think they would very much welcome having 2 good programs like Texas Tech and TCU. TCU would fit in well if the Pac-12 does ever decide to expand again. Actually, that would put them. Yeah, if they do, I feel like they would expand to 16 if the Big 12 did disband, and then adding maybe like a Boise State and a Colorado State. Both those would make a lot of sense over in the Pac-12. Maybe Fresno State or San Jose State. Either way, if they added Boise State, that Boise State TCU, I wouldn't really call it a rivalry. But back in the day, both those two were the best group of 5 teams. And you could kind of put that back together. That might be a way to look at it. But like I said, it'd be 2 good programs that the Pac-12 could add into their South Division that would bring very competitive football and just very high-powered offenses, similar to Oregon, Cal at times. Cal tries to run that sort of offense. Again, USC at times. And trying to think of a few other ones. Washington State, that's a good example. So, next one, and I'm sorry, Baylor, but I'm going to put you in the Conference USA. Baylor's just, I don't see them in 2 or 3 years being that successful anymore. We'll see, but that scandal, I think, is going to devour that program. Right now, they'll be fine. Right now, they'll still be a competitive national program, but that's maybe for a year or 2 more. After that, I think they're kind of doomed. Their recruiting looks like it's screwed, at least for the short term. And who knows where they're going to be going with their coaching situation. Their next QB up looks like he's going to transfer right now, Jarrett Stidham. And, they might go to the American, but the Conference USA just makes a little bit of sense to me. It's where Houston used to play. I think that's where Rice still plays. Yeah. So, they would have other teams in Texas to play, and Conference USA is pretty much it's not a nationwide conference, but it spans quite a bit of the country, so it's not like Baylor be joining a conference that's singularly geographically located. So, next one, West Virginia, and this is one of the most obvious ones. I think they go to the ACC. The ACC, if they were able to add in 2 teams, could actually be a monster of a conference. If they were able to add West Virginia, that'd be a very good combination. West Virginia actually very much geographically makes sense in the ACC. They go back with some of their old rivals, Pitt, Syracuse. They'd be closer to Penn State. Penn State's still in the Big Ten either way. But either way, it would still make sense. It make a lot more sense for West Virginia to go back to the ACC. I don't think they were ever in it. Anyway, Iowa State. Again, another one that I think is a very obvious choice, and that's the American Athletic Conference. The American Athletic Conference is actually somewhat competitive for basketball. Iowa State would get to have some rivalries with, like, UConn, Memphis, if they get back up to that point, where, you know, it wouldn't be just a king dominating some mid-major college basketball conference. They'd be in a competitive one and a competitive football conference, one where they fit in a little bit better for football. You know, they haven't done extremely well in football in the Big 12 yet. So move on to the next one, Texas. And man, it'd be hard to put Texas in any conference. I really think that they would end up going independent just because Texas doesn't really like working with others. That's what it seems like. I think Nebraska, Colorado both left the Big 12 because they were sick of Texas. Texas is not really obviously, it's good to have Texas in any conference, but I don't know which one they would join. I think, like I said, any conference would gladly like to have one of the most storied college football programs of all time. There's no doubt about that, but you know, they'd have to give up the Longhorn network probably, especially to join a conference like the SEC. And I don't know. I think they would end up joining one eventually, but I think they'd end up going independent, kind of pulling Notre Dame or BYU for a few years. So Kansas State and Kansas. I think that both of these would end up going to the Big Ten and making the Big Ten just a superb basketball conference. Obviously, Kansas is not competitive whatsoever when it comes to football, but the Big Ten has a few teams that aren't that good at football and are just good at basketball. Indiana most years, even though Indiana's kind of taken a slip in basketball recently. Last year they were good. Rutgers has not really been good at football recently. Maryland's been struggling in football recently, but still doing well in basketball. So Kansas wouldn't be alone there. You get to add in one of the all-time greatest basketball programs. And then Kansas State, obviously honestly a pretty well-rounded athletic program. Not the greatest in the world, but they're still competitive in both basketball and football. And then the Oklahoma schools, OU and OSU. I think that they would both end up going to the SEC. I think the SEC would love to snag both of them. It makes a lot of sense. You have a geographic rivalry between OU, OSU, and Arkansas, all within 2 to 3 hours of each other. You get to keep Bedlam together. Obviously, the OU-Texas would be separated, but if Texas is independent, then they're still going to play that game every year, most likely. You keep OU and Oklahoma State in a West Division, they get to still stay against former Big 12 rival Texas A&M. You'd probably redo the division so OU and OSU could still play Mizzou, again, both within about 5-6 hours, or all within 5-6 hours of each other. I mentioned Arkansas. Even LSU is not that far away. Louisiana still has a lot of close ties to the Big 12, obviously, with being a somewhat rival with Texas A&M now. Even Ole Miss, still like 8 hours away. Ole Miss played Oklahoma State last year, railed them in bowl games, so it's not like they haven't met in forever. And then even Mississippi State played Oklahoma State a few years ago. So I think the move would make a lot of sense. I think any conference, again, would more than welcome OU and Oklahoma State. Both are tremendously well-rounded athletic programs. Oklahoma State, not really tremendously competitive in basketball last year, but very competitive in football the last couple of years. Overall, a very good historic basketball school. Same thing with OU. Obviously, you add in one of the greatest, if not the greatest, football program of all time in OU. Not to mention all the other sports. Oklahoma State almost won a College World Series this year. OU not too shabby in baseball either. OU is very good with softball, gymnastics. SEC is very competitive in gymnastics. I know that also. But this is looking a little bit further than I meant to. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that all these conference choices would make sense. I think it's a very interesting topic to talk about, to see what happened if the Big 12 does disband, because in 4 years, let's face it, the Big 12 is either going to have expanded or have disbanded, or just have found out some solution that really works for the 10 teams, or just all 10 teams just say, screw it, we're going to turn, or we're all going to do good in everything, and we don't want anyone else there. But I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, that pretty much does it for this video. Again, go check out the article that I'm going to post today about this in my blog. The link to that will be in the description below. Also, go check out my Twitter. I tweet Sports Fire all day, every day. The link to that will be in the description below. Instagram, also go check that out, my Stadium Series tour. Give that a follow. That would really help me out. So that pretty much is it. See ya.